Good evening. My name is Jim Twelves, and I'm talking to my students at Alpha Crucis College who are in their final placement, and they have to do a TPA this semester. So let me get started. First document I'd like you to have a look at is called the Teaching Performance Assessment, Alpha Crucis College Procedures. It's simply two pages. And the point of this is to give you a quick grasp of what the whole thing is about. And let me draw your attention to the third paragraph. As a teacher education student, it is your responsibility to manage your TPA within your mentors' classes. How well you perform this task will directly impact your teaching performance assessment performance. Funny language, that. Good management is vital and will clear the way for good pedagogy. Above all, you will find that the TPA has many documents required. Your success will be how well you manage that paper trail, which becomes a digital trail. So, give your mentor a copy of these procedures and go through them point by point to ensure your mentor is as aware as they need to be. They're not going to have to do much. They're just going to have to give you some documents and some samples of student work. That should be about all they'll have to do for your TPA. So get them to look at the website, get them to look at the Queensland College of Teachers PowerPoint. I know it's Queensland, that's okay. It's applicable to the whole of Australia. So what does a TPA look like? Well, there are 4 parts: planning, teaching, assessing, and reflecting, all equally weighted. But section 1, planning, has 4 parts to it, and all the others have 2. But they all come out in the end with the same weight. So the first part, you have to dig into the school community, its context, and there's a template for you in the guidebook, so follow that. It's not hard. Arguably one of the key points of this whole exercise is section 1, part B, the student case study. You are to provide a profile of 3 selected students. You choose them, and they're to represent top, middle, and bottom of the class you've got. It doesn't matter if it's streamed, it's just the class you've got. And it doesn't matter if you don't get it right, top, middle, and bottom. Near the top, near the bottom, somewhere in the middle. You should aim to sort these 3 out early in your placement, in week 1 ideally. And you should get some data pertaining to the period just prior to your arrival, as in the weeks, maybe a month before you get into the school. Try and get some samples of the students' work that you selected from before you've come. That delineates their students' achievement. That will give you a grasp of the students' capabilities, performance so far, their starting point. Under C, you have to annotate lesson plans. Again, the details are in the guidebook, so follow that carefully. They are good and will give you food. There are lesson plans in the guidebook. They're actually all written from a PDHPE or dance perspective, because that's what the Australian College of Physical Education focuses on. That's not to put you off, and I suspect that not many of our students will be doing their TPA on dance. You never know, one day we might have one doing that. But those sample lesson plans are actually really rather good and will give you some key points. But the key point, really, at the end is you have to be comfortable with the lesson plans you're using, and so does your mentor. So there's no big deal. Make sure you use a lesson plan format that they're happy with. Teaching and assessing rationale. So you've got to think up ahead, how are you going to assess these students that you have? How are you going to measure their performance? And you'll find that for part 1D, there's a 9 sub-questions which will guide you through. So each individual answer is relatively short. And this whole thing for D, maybe 300 words plus tables and data. So that's planning. And then the actual teaching. Now, 2 things to say about the teaching section. There's a lesson A, which your tertiary supervisor will observe in the flesh, as it were. The point here is that it'll be towards the end of your placement. Usually, experientially, it's one of the last 2 days. Choose a lesson that you can predict is going to show most evidence of students' growth, ideally. Of course, you can't be sure. It might be a terrible lesson. That's why it isn't. But choose one that is likely to show off the evidence of student learning as best you can. So that's one where your tertiary supervisor comes to watch. B is a lesson that you select towards the front of your placement. This one, if the school permits it, video record it, and there are guidelines to show you how to do that, or audio record it, or if they're not allowed, then a detailed written recount of that lesson, which your supervisor signs off as being a fair comment about that lesson. The idea of the recording and the videoing isn't so much to watch the kids, but to watch you. So backs of heads of kids perhaps certainly don't worry about, and it's only a 10-minute slot, so it's not the whole lesson. But the point is, it's a point of reference towards the front of your placement that you're recording and reflecting deeply on. What could you do better, I guess? And section 3, assessing. Here, you need to collect work for the 3 case study students at the beginning, during, and towards the end of your placement. So you should have, think of it this way, 3 by 3. 3 students at the beginning, 3 during somewhere, and 3 at the end, to reflect that hopefully the plan is that the students will have grown in their time with you, and they'll have grown in confidence and their skill level, and you won't be just have stretched the top one and the other 2 have gone backwards. Hopefully all 3 will have grown relative to where they started from. So that's what the work samples are for. The marked assessment tasks. This is crucial here. Provide 1 key summative assessment task, singular, designated to assess the student's achievement during your TPA. You're required to collect a completed assessment task from 3 case study students and use the marking rubric that you created along with their assessment task to mark their work. So the crucial thing there is how well you're marking students' work and how well you're constructing a summative assessment task to measure performance. Reflecting. I think reflecting is actually the best of all 4 sections, frankly. So A, you reflect on each of the lessons in the TPA learning sequence. You complete detailed lesson reflections, seek to ensure that your reflections are constructive. In other words, don't be too hard on yourself. Identify elements of your teaching strategies that have been most impactful for students learning while identifying areas where you still need to work. It's not a big section. This one here, 4B, I would argue is the most important, and it is the biggest, 1,000 words. Write a report, and I stress it's a report, not an essay. A report on the learning and progression of the 3 case study students. at the conclusion of your placement. You do this after you've finished and gone home. The guidebook says within a week. That's not a big deal, but it should be as close to the end of your placement as can be feasibly done. Maybe a fortnight, but if you will need more than that, you need to talk to your tertiary supervisor to arrange a different date. Try and do it as close to placement as you can. In this piece, you should seek to bring together your own feedback on your lesson plans, formal tertiary supervisor's feedback on lesson A, your own feedback on lesson B, plus continuous feedback from your mentor throughout your placement. So it's a synthesis of all this feedback. Then, in the light of this, reflect on the learning and progress of the sample of the 3 students that you nominated at the start of your placement. I like to say that I like to stress this is a reflection on evidence. So don't be caught up in how well you write it. Most crucial thing you're looking for is how well you reflect on the process, given the evidence you've got. Now, in 4 weeks, your students may not have progressed as much as you'd wanted to. That's fine. All sorts of things happen, and your reflection on that process is crucial. So how do you submit the TPA? Technically, you can submit a hard copy, a lever arch file. Not saying it's going to be that thick, but it might be that thick. Neatly divided into 4 sections with continuous page numbers from the start. But I would prefer it if you can submit digitally as a specific part of your e-portfolio, again divided into 4 parts. Page numbers not so significant, of course, except in the bits and pieces you submit. In this case, simply upload a Word file to your relevant Moodle page, and it'll be a Word file with the normal cover sheet, plus the second page having a URL on it, which will take me or Mr. Brinton to your digital e-portfolio. In either case, ensure your last 2 pages are the TPA checklist and the appendices. Filled out at the top, but left blank for the tertiary supervisor to complete from the table onwards. Okay, so that's the introduction. Now I would like to take you to a few comments about the guidebook, which I'll now try and share with you. As you can see, we're partnering with the Australian College of Physical Education. It's a great privilege to work with them, and very exciting because we'll be moderating our marks with them. We'll be marking their students as well as they'll be marking you. That'll be great fun. So, the key things I'd like to draw your attention to in this document are page 6 and 7. They look like this. Page 6 and 7, the teaching performance assessment tasks. These 2 pages are an amplification. They're the real detail from that original document we looked at just now. And it gives you all the GTS's, graduate teacher standards, that this particular part is seeking to measure. So that's your written commentary, your profile. We've already gone through all this. Okay, and obviously you don't use student names, you use student A, B, and C. So these 2 pages are absolutely crucial. They're key. Start there. Then, if you move on to page 11, TPA checklist. Now, for each of these sections, so this is for when you're submitting it, you will include this page in your submission, and you'll have a little tick in there to say you've done your commentary. Now, these letters here indicate that for that commentary, you're going to get awarded exceeds expectations, demonstrated that you've met the expectations, or you've not demonstrated expectations. So you'll get one of those. It's a very simple scoring system. So that's what that's there for. You need to hand that in as a Word file inside your e-portfolio, or the back 2 pages of your hard copy if you're handing it in as a hard copy. So that's that. Now, next you end up on page, no, that wasn't page, that was page 9, my apologies, not 11, page 9. And then you go to page 11 onwards, and these are the detailed rubrics and further detail of what's required. So this is your working document. If you want to know how you're going to get a distinction or a higher distinction, which is 7.5 to 10 out of 10, then these are the descriptors that differentiate that sort of grade. So that's the detail. There's the GTSDs again, GTSs. And that goes on for all 4 sections with a rubric for each. From page 26, you've got the appendices. Now, don't forget these appendices were written for the Australian College of Physical Education. So there tends to be I suppose, a bias. That's how they wrote it, and we've adapted it, we've edited it. So there's still an element of their college in here. So you'll find that the appendices are referred to in the details section. So you simply go to the relevant appendix and you use the template. It's absolutely wonderful. So it prompts you as to what data are you going to need for the commentary. And then it gives you a further prompt about what is a school context, what you need to write about a TPA class, and so on. And this is a template for the case study. So there are templates for most parts of this TPA project. And as I said before, these are the lesson plan examples. They are not has to, but they're simply examples, and I commend them to you for study. I think I'm nearly there. I just think I would like to emphasize that lesson A, when you come across that in the teaching section, that's part 2, section 2, that's observed by your teaching tertiary supervisor, and it's going to be at the end of your placement. Lesson B is your choice. You choose when you're going to do that. And hopefully try and negotiate video or audio, but if you can't, please don't stress. If the school has very strict rules about it, please don't try and push them. They are accommodating you. We have to do what they want. I might actually take you to the end of the guidebook and talk to you about the very last page. Now, this is a submission cover sheet, which is actually going to go right at the end. So hand it in with everything else. Oh, a word about everything else. Most of your work, I suspect, is going to be students' work with your marks on it. Now, I suspect in most cases it's going to be a pen on paper. In some schools it might be digital on digital, but supposing it's pen on paper, which I think it will be in most cases still, your goal is basically to do much more than a tick and a cross and total up the number of ticks. That's very, very basic feedback. The idea of good feedback and good notes will be for you to write encouraging comments and how to improve notes, and you basically need to PDF those sheets and let them become part of your digital evidence. So at the end of all the digital evidence, you submit this form here. Some of these sections are specific to the Australian College of Physical Education, so it's no big deal. this is for the tertiary supervisor to complete and to say, yeah, you've done this, or no, you haven't. And the tertiary supervisor signs it. It's a bit neither here nor there, but they use that, and I don't see why we shouldn't as a checklist as well, even though in our particular case, some of these are going to be not relevant. We'll work that through as we carry on. But do not worry about it. I'm going to stop sharing and finish off by wishing you all the best with your TPA. Please make sure that you plan and plan and plan ahead of time as best you can. I know this information is coming very late, for which I'm sorry. Rest assured, it's up. I'll tell you this story to finish with, if I may. Everyone's got to do a final placement. We've been doing that for 9 years now for Crucis. It's nothing new. In the Masters, the students are doing an action research project within their final placement. So the idea there is that there's a synergy between what they're doing on the placement and what they're doing in the action research project. The TPA comes in as well, and I've only got 2 hands. So basically, we want to make sure that as far as possible, what you're doing for one aspect can double up for another. What you're doing in your general lesson preparation and your support of students will be what you do anyway for your TPA. So it's not a case of, oh, I'll do my placement work. Oh, tonight I've got to do TPA work. No, 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 no. It's all together. TPA and placement are together. Minimize the extra work, please. Above all, make sure your paper trail is so neat and tidy. Don't leave it till after the placement to try and keep in order. Otherwise, you'll have forgotten. God bless and enjoy. Keep in touch. Bye for now.